I stood at the window, watching the black SUV pull away from the curb. My stepbrother Dean was in the back seat, grinning like he'd won the lottery. My mother waved from the passenger side, that practiced smile she always wore when she knew she was doing something wrong but couldn't admit it. My father didn't look back at all. We couldn't afford 2 tickets, Calvin. You understand, right? That's what she'd said 3 days ago, standing in the kitchen with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug like it was a shield. The words had hung in the air between us, heavy and final. No discussion. No negotiation. Just acceptance expected, like always. Dean gets the vacation. Calvin gets the empty house. The SUV turned the corner and disappeared, taking with it 2 weeks of family memories I'd never be part of. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and laughed. Not because anything was funny, because if I didn't laugh, I might do something I'd regret. If you've ever felt like the forgotten one in your own family, the one who's always asked to understand while everyone else gets to just live, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hit that like button because this story, it's for every person who's been told they're not the priority. This wasn't the first time I'd been left behind. It was just the loudest, the clearest, the one that made it impossible to pretend anymore. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I walked back through the house, my footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Every room felt bigger without them. Emptier. The living room still had Dean's shoes kicked off by the couch, expensive sneakers I'd watched my father buy him last month. The kitchen counter was covered in travel documents and boarding passes they'd left scattered in their rush. Just one trip, Dean had said when he saw my face. Don't take it personally, man. But I did take it personally. How could I not? Dean had been in this family for 5 years. 5. I'd been here my entire life, 32 years of being the responsible one, the mature one, the one who never made waves. I'd fixed Dad's truck when the mechanic wanted too much money. I'd helped Mom launch her flower business after her surgery, spending weekends building her website and driving deliveries. And Dean? Dean had dropped out of college. Twice. Totaled a car Dad bought him. Showed up late to every family dinner and acted like we should be grateful he came at all. But Dean got the tickets to Savannah. Dean got the beach house. Dean got the memories. I walked upstairs, past the photos lining the hallway wall. There I was at 8, gap-toothed and hopeful. There was Dean at 23, arm around my father, like they were best friends. My high school graduation photo, small, tucked in the corner. Dean's college acceptance letter, framed, center stage. Never mind that he'd dropped out 6 months later. The pattern had always been there. I'd just gotten really good at not seeing it. I pushed open the door to my old bedroom, the one I still stayed in when I visited, even though I had my own place across town now. The bed was made. The walls were bare. It looked like a guest room, not the room of someone who'd grown up here. Like I was already being erased. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We're at the gate. Dean says hi. Love you, sweetie. Love you, sweetie. The words felt hollow. Like something you say because you're supposed to, not because you mean it. I typed back a thumbs-up emoji and tossed the phone onto the bed. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks alone in this house, surrounded by evidence of my own invisibility. 2 weeks to sit with the truth I'd been avoiding my whole life, that in this family, I would always come second. Always be the one asked to sacrifice. Always be told it was for the good of everyone, when really it was just easier to disappoint me than to disappoint Dean. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen in years. Hanging on a hook behind the door, Dad's old study keychain. The one with the little silver safe key attached. He must have forgotten it in the rush to leave. I picked it up, felt the weight of it in my palm. Dad had always been secretive about money. Always said we were comfortable but careful. That's why they couldn't afford 2 tickets, right? That's why I'd paid my own way through community college while Dean got a free ride to state school. That's why I drove a 15-year-old sedan while Dean got a brand new truck for his birthday. Comfortable but careful. I looked at that key, and something shifted in my chest. Not anger yet. Just curiosity. The kind that whispers instead of shouts. What exactly couldn't they afford? The first night alone, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that keychain, about the safe in Dad's study that I'd never been allowed to touch, about all the times he'd said, "Money's tight," while somehow finding enough for Dean's next thing, whatever Dean needed that week. The house made noises I'd never noticed before. The refrigerator hummed. The heating system clicked on and off. Floorboards creaked like someone was walking through rooms where no one stood. I got up around 2 in the morning and made coffee. Strong black, the way Dad used to make it before work. I stood in the kitchen where Mom had delivered the news about the tickets, and I felt something break loose inside me. Not rage. Worse than that. Clarity. They'd chosen. They'd actually sat down and chosen which son got to go. And I'd lost. How do you compete with someone who's always needed more? Dean was the wounded bird, the project, the one who required constant attention and funding and second chances. I was just there. Steady. Reliable. The son who'd be fine no matter what. Except I wasn't fine. I spent the next morning cleaning, scrubbing counters, vacuuming carpets, organizing closets, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind quiet. But by afternoon, I was standing outside Dad's study, that keychain heavy in my pocket. The door was usually locked. Dad liked his privacy, his space. But I tried the handle anyway. It opened. The room smelled like old leather and furniture polish. Dad's desk sat in the center, covered in papers he'd left behind. Bank statements. Bills. A half-written letter to some investment company. I didn't touch any of it at first. Just stood there, feeling like an intruder in my own family's house. Then I saw the filing cabinet in the corner. 4 drawers, all closed. All probably locked. I pulled a small silver key from the keychain and tried the top drawer. It slid open. Inside were folders, green, yellow, manila, all labeled in Dad's careful handwriting. Taxes 2019. Insurance documents. Property deed. Nothing shocking. Nothing that explained why my stomach was twisting into knots. I moved to the second drawer. More of the same. Utility bills going back years. Car titles. Mortgage papers. The third drawer stuck a little when I pulled. Inside was a single black folder, unmarked, pushed toward the back like someone had hidden it there and hoped no one would look. I pulled it out. Opened it. The first page was a legal document, something about a trust fund established in 2008. My mother's name was at the top. Eliza Mercer. My biological mom, the one who died when I was 12. The beneficiary line read, Calvin James Mercer. My hands started shaking before I even understood why. I flipped through the pages. Account statements. Withdrawal records. Transfer receipts. All of it in Dad's handwriting, his signature at the bottom of each form. 50,000 withdrawn in 2019, notation. Dean vehicle purchase. 30,000 in 2020, notation. Dean tuition, spring semester. 25,000 in 2021, notation. Family vacation fund. The pages kept coming. Years of them. Small amounts, large amounts, all bleeding out of an account I didn't even know existed. An account my mother had set up for me. For my future. My education. My life. And Dad had been draining it like a personal ATM for Dean's endless needs. I sat down hard on the floor, the folder spilling across my lap. How much was left? I flipped to the most recent statement, dated just last month. Original balance, $240,000. Current balance, $18,000. My vision blurred. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped wire around my ribs and pulled. They couldn't afford 2 tickets to Savannah. But they'd spent over $200,000 of my money I never knew I had, on a stepbrother who'd never worked a real job in his life. If you've ever discovered that the people you trusted most were lying to your face for years, drop a comment. Because what I found next made everything so much worse. There was a letter tucked into the back of the folder. The envelope was yellowed at the edges, sealed but not glued. Like someone had closed it but wanted to be able to open it again. My name was written across the front in my father's handwriting, not typed, handwritten. Which meant this wasn't some legal formality. This was personal. I pulled out the single page inside, and my father's words stared back at me. Calvin, if you're reading this, it means I haven't yet found the courage to tell you what I should have years ago. My throat tightened. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. When she got sick, the only thing she worried about was making sure you'd be taken care of. She worked double shifts, saved everything she could, and put it all into a trust for your future. She made me promise I'd protect it, that I'd protect you. I almost stopped reading, almost put the letter back and walked away. But I kept going. I tried, son. I really did. But when I married Linda, things got complicated. Dean needed help more than I expected, more than we could afford. And the trust was just sitting there, and I told myself I'd pay it back. I told myself you'd understand someday. My hands clenched around the paper. I borrowed from it, just once at first, then twice. Then I stopped counting. I know what I did was wrong. I know I broke your mother's trust and yours. But I needed to keep this family together, and Dean, he needed more support than you did. You were always so strong, Calvin. So independent. I knew you'd be okay without it. The letter ended there. No apology. No plan to fix it. Just an explanation that somehow made it worse. He knew. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he did it anyway. I sat in that study for an hour, maybe more, reading through every document in the folder. Every withdrawal had a reason attached. Dean's car, Dean's rent, Dean's credit card debt, Dean's emergency trip to Vegas that cost $12,000. My mother had died trying to give me a future. And my father had spent it raising someone else's son. The anger came slowly, like water heating to a boil. It started as disbelief, then hurt, then something sharper. Something that made my jaw ache from clenching and my hands curl into fists. They were in Savannah right now, laughing, taking photos, making memories, spending money they said they didn't have, money that was mine. And I was supposed to understand, to be mature, to not make a scene. I stood up, folder in hand, and walked out of the study. I didn't lock it, didn't clean up. I left the drawer open, the papers scattered. Evidence of my father's betrayal spread across the floor like a crime scene. Because that's what it was. A crime. I went to the attic. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed space to think, somewhere far from the rest of the house. I climbed the narrow stairs and pushed open the dusty door. The attic was full of boxes, Christmas decorations, old furniture, things no one wanted but couldn't throw away. I sat on a trunk near the window and stared out at the street below. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. Dean tried parasailing. Wish you could see the photos. Miss you. I turned the phone face down. They didn't miss me. They missed the idea of me. The version that smiled and nodded and never asked questions. I looked around the attic, at all the forgotten things packed away up here. That's what I was to them. Something you keep around because it's easier than getting rid of it, but you don't actually use it anymore. My eyes caught on something in the corner. Behind a stack of boxes labeled winter clothes was another shape, dark, metallic, square. I stood up and moved the boxes aside. It was a safe. Old, heavy, with a combination dial on the front. I'd never seen it before, which meant Dad had hidden it up here on purpose. I crouched down and ran my hand over the dusty surface. Why would he keep a safe in the attic when he had one in his study? What else was he hiding? I tried the handle. Locked, obviously. But I remembered something. Years ago, when I was in high school, Dad had taught me the combination to his office safe, back when he still trusted me with things. It was a pattern, Mom's birthday, then his, then mine. For -17-9. I wiped the dust off the dial and tried it.
4, 1, 7, 9.
The lock clicked. The door swung open, and inside was something I never expected to find. More folders. More papers. But these were different. Bank statements from accounts I didn't recognize. Property deeds for a cabin upstate I'd never heard of. And receipts, dozens of them, for purchases that made no sense. A boat. A timeshare in Florida. Season tickets to football games. All dated within the last 3 years. All purchased after Mom's trust fund had been borrowed. I pulled everything out and spread it across the attic floor. The numbers didn't lie. While I'd been working 2 jobs to pay off my community college loans, my father had been living like he'd won the lottery. My lottery. There was a receipt for the Savannah Beach house rental, $4,000 for 2 weeks. Paid in full last month. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the empty attic. Couldn't afford 2 tickets. That sentence kept repeating in my head like a broken record. Couldn't afford. Couldn't afford. Couldn't afford. He could afford a boat, a timeshare, a beach house.
But not me.
I found another envelope, this one addressed to Dean. I opened it without hesitation. I was past caring about privacy now. Inside was a letter from my father, dated 2 years ago. Dean, I know things have been tough since the divorce. I want you to know that Linda and I consider you our son, fully and completely. What's mine is yours. You'll never have to worry about money or support. I promise. What's mine is yours. Except it wasn't his. It was mine. He'd promised my mother he'd protect what she'd left me, and instead he'd given it away to make himself feel like a hero. I sat back against a box and closed my eyes. Every time I'd asked for help, with tuition, with car repairs, with anything, Dad had given me the same answer. You're capable, Calvin. You'll figure it out. I believe in you. I thought he was teaching me independence. Turns out he was just saving the money for Dean. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about every lie, every excuse, every time I'd been told to be understanding while Dean got everything handed to him. I thought about Mom, my real mom, Eliza. She'd worked herself to exhaustion to save that money. I remembered her coming home late, smelling like the hospital, too tired to even eat dinner. And I'd asked her once why she worked so much. For you, baby, she'd said, brushing hair out of my face. So, you never have to struggle like I did. And Dad had thrown it all away. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, Dean and my father on jet skis, both grinning, sunbright, and carefree. The caption from Dad, living the dream. Wish you were here, son. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I took a picture of the trust fund documents, the withdrawal receipts, the letter where Dad admitted everything. I sent them to myself, backed them up to 3 different places. Because when they came home, tanned and rested and happy, I wasn't going to be the understanding son anymore. I was going to be the son who knew the truth. And the truth doesn't forgive. It settles scores. They came back on a Sunday. I heard the SUV pull into the driveway around noon, heard the doors slam, heard Dean's loud laugh as he dragged luggage up the front walk. I was sitting in the living room, waiting. The trust fund folder was on the coffee table in front of me, closed but visible. Mom came through the door first, arms full of shopping bags and a huge smile on her face. Calvin, oh honey, we missed you so much. She set the bags down and rushed over to hug me. She smelled like sunscreen and expensive perfume. I didn't hug back. She pulled away, confused. What's wrong? Dad and Dean came in behind her, both sunburned and relaxed. Dean was wearing a new shirt, probably bought with my money. Dad had a baseball cap from some Savannah restaurant, the price tag still dangling from the brim. We brought you something, Mom said, digging through one of the bags. She pulled out a gray t-shirt with Savannah Beach printed across the front in faded letters. The kind you buy at a tourist trap for $9. She held it out to me like it was a treasure. I looked at the shirt, then at her, then at the folder on the table. You want to explain this first? I said quietly. The room went still. Dad followed my gaze to the folder. His face changed, color draining, smile disappearing. He knew exactly what it was. Calvin, he started, but I held up a hand.
No, you don't get to talk yet.
I picked up the folder and opened it, pulled out the trust fund statements and laid them on the coffee table one by one. 50,000 here, 30,000 there. Page after page of my future disappearing into Dean's present. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Dean frowned, looking between me and the papers like he couldn't figure out what was happening. What is that? Mom whispered. My inheritance, I said. The one from my actual mother. The one Dad's been spending for the past 5 years without telling me. Dad set his suitcase down slowly. Son, I can explain. Explain what? My voice was steady, cold. Explain how you took $200,000 that wasn't yours? Explain how you bought Dean a car with my money? Explain how you paid for this vacation with my money while telling me you couldn't afford an extra plane ticket. Mom looked at Dad. Richard, is this true? He wouldn't meet her eyes. That was answer enough. Dean spoke up, defensive. Hey, I didn't know anything about this. Don't drag me into whatever drama you've got going. I turned to him. Really looked at him. This stranger who'd walked into our family 5 years ago and somehow become the favorite. He wasn't a bad person, just clueless. Entitled. Used to getting everything without question. Your car, I said. $50,000. Your tuition, your rent, your credit cards, all of it came from a trust fund my dying mother set up for me. You've been living off my inheritance, Dean. Whether you knew it or not. His face went red. That's not my fault. No, I agreed. It's his. I looked at my father. This man I'd spent my whole life trying to please, trying to be good enough for. And he'd been robbing me the entire time. You wrote me a letter, I said. Said I'd understand someday. That I was strong enough to be okay without it. Dad's shoulders slumped. Calvin, I was going to pay it back. When? I demanded. When were you going to pay back $200,000? When were you going to tell me? When I turned 40. 50? Never. Mom was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. We thought we were helping the family. You were helping Dean, I corrected. I was never part of that equation. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dad tried to speak twice, but nothing came out. Dean stood by the door like he wanted to run. Mom just cried. I picked up the folder and stood. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking you to explain. I'm telling you that I know. And now we're going to fix it. Dad's head snapped up. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot. I called a lawyer on Thursday. Sent him copies of everything. Trust documents, withdrawal receipts, your letter admitting what you did. He says what you did isn't just wrong, it's illegal. Theft. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. The color drained from Dad's face completely. You can't be serious. You get a letter next week, I continued. Official. Legal. Explaining exactly how much you owe me and what happens if you don't pay. Calvin, please, Mom begged. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said. Family doesn't lie for years and then act surprised when someone finds out. I walked toward the door, folder tucked under my arm. Dean stepped aside to let me pass. Before I left, I turned back one more time. Dad looked 10 years older than he had that morning. Mom was still crying. Dean just looked lost. You said you couldn't afford 2 tickets, I said softly. Turns out you couldn't afford to lose your son either. But you did it anyway. I walked out into the afternoon sun, leaving the Savannah Beach t-shirt crumpled on the floor behind me. The best part? This was just the beginning. The lawyer's name was Marcus Webb. We'd gone to high school together, back when life was simpler and family meant something different. He'd become everything his teachers predicted, sharp, successful, the kind of attorney who didn't lose cases. I sat across from him in his downtown office, the trust fund documents spread between us like evidence at a crime scene. This is textbook breach of fiduciary duty, Marcus said, flipping through page after page. Your father had a legal obligation to manage this trust in your best interest. Instead, he used it as a personal bank account. Can we get it back? I asked. Marcus looked up, his expression serious. Most of it. The law's on your side, Calvin. But I need to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Taking legal action against your father, it's going to get ugly. Family cases always do. I thought about that t-shirt. About Dean's grin in the back seat of the SUV. About every time I'd been told to understand while they spent my mother's sacrifice on someone else's comfort. I'm sure, I said. Marcus nodded. Then we filed tomorrow. The next 3 weeks were strange. I went to work, came home, lived my life, but everything felt different. I knew what was coming. I knew the bomb I'd planted was about to go off. Dad called 12 times. I didn't answer. Mom left voicemails, her voice shaking, begging me to reconsider. "We can work this out as a family," she said. "Please, Calvin, don't do this." But we'd never work things out as a family. We'd work things out the way Dad wanted, and everyone else just had to accept it. Dean sent one text. "This is messed up, man. You're really going to destroy them over money?" I didn't respond, because it wasn't about money.
It was about respect.
About being seen. About my mother's dying wish being honored instead of stolen. Marcus filed the papers on a Wednesday. By Friday, the certified letter arrived at my father's house. I wasn't there when he opened it, but Mom called me immediately after, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "How could you?" she cried. "How could you do this to your own father?" "How could he do it to me?" I asked quietly. She had no answer for that. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Marcus said it was a formality. The evidence was overwhelming. The real question wasn't if we'd win, but how much and how fast. I started having trouble sleeping again. Not because I felt guilty, I didn't, but because every night I'd think about my real mom, about how hard she'd worked, about how she'd trusted Dad to do the right thing. And I'd think about how I was finally doing what she couldn't, holding him accountable. One night, 2 weeks before the hearing, I drove past the old house. The lights were on in the living room. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. Dad, Mom, probably Dean. They looked like a family having a normal evening. But nothing about us had ever been normal. I drove away before anyone saw me. I had one more stop to make, one more piece of evidence to secure. Because if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The next morning, I met with the bank that had managed the trust. They gave me copies of every transaction, every withdrawal slip, every signature. Dad's handwriting was on all of it.
Clear.
Undeniable.
Guilty.
Marcus looked at the new documents and whistled low. This is even better than what we had. He didn't just take the money, he forged authorization documents. That's fraud, Calvin. Criminal fraud. My stomach twisted. What does that mean? It means if we wanted to, we could press criminal charges. He could go to jail. I sat with that for a long moment. Did I want my father in prison? Did I want to be the son who put him there? But then I remembered $18,000. That's all that was left of $240,000. All that remained of my mother's love, her sacrifice, her hope for my future. Let's focus on getting the money back first, I said. The rest we'll see. Marcus nodded. Fair enough. But Calvin, be ready. The hearing's going to be brutal. Your father's going to try everything, guilt, manipulation, maybe even lies.
Can you handle that?
I thought about standing at the window, watching them drive away, about the empty house and the forgotten son, and the years of being second place. Yeah, I said. I can handle it. Because some people think revenge is loud. That it's about screaming and violence and dramatic confrontations. But real revenge? It's quiet. It's patient. It's legal documents and court dates and justice served cold. And mine was just getting started. If you've ever had to stand up to family, knowing it would cost you everything but staying silent would cost you more, leave a comment. Because what happened next changed everything. The certified letter arrived at the house on a Thursday afternoon. I know because Dad called me immediately after.
Not Mom this time.
Him. His voice was different, smaller, scared in a way I'd never heard before. Calvin, please.
We need to talk about this.
Face to face. Man to man. There's nothing to talk about, I said. You'll have your chance to explain in court. Don't do this, he begged. I'm your father. And I'm your son, I interrupted. The one whose inheritance you stole. See you at the hearing. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, from something else. Something that felt like power and pain mixed together. The next few days were tense. Marcus called with updates. Dad had hired a lawyer, some guy who specialized in family disputes. They were going to argue that Dad had managed the trust appropriately, that the money had been used for family expenses that benefited everyone. "It's weak," Marcus said, "but they'll try. Be prepared for them to paint you as ungrateful,
Selfish.
the son who's tearing the family apart over money." "Let them," I said. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for job interviews back when I thought hard work and loyalty meant something. I met Marcus outside the courthouse at 8:30. "Remember," he said as we walked in, "stay calm. Don't react. Let the evidence speak." Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. My father sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit. Mom was in the gallery behind them, tissues clutched in her hand. Dean sat beside her, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. They all turned when I walked in. Mom's face crumpled. Dad's went hard, defensive. Dean just stared. I sat down next to Marcus and didn't look back. The judge was a woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She reviewed the case file for what felt like forever, then looked up. "This is a petition to recover funds from a mismanaged trust," she said. "Mr. Webb, you're representing the plaintiff?" Marcus stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Calvin Mercer is seeking restitution for funds improperly withdrawn from a trust established by his late mother." "And Mr. Patterson, you're representing Richard Mercer?" Dad's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We contest the characterization of these withdrawals as improper. Mr. Mercer was the trustee and made decisions he believed were in the family's best interest." The judge nodded. "Let's see the evidence." Marcus presented everything. The trust documents, the withdrawal records, the receipts showing Dean's car, his tuition, the vacation rentals, the letter Dad had written admitting what he'd done. With each piece of evidence, I watched my father shrink a little more. His lawyer tried to argue that the money had been borrowed, with intent to repay, that Dad had been managing a blended family and made difficult choices, that I was employed and stable while Dean had needed more support. "Your Honor," Marcus said, standing again, the trust was explicit. These funds were designated for Calvin Mercer's education, housing, and future security. Mr. Richard Mercer had no legal authority to redirect them to his stepson, regardless of his intentions. The judge looked at my father. "Mr. Mercer, did you inform your son about this trust?"
Dad stood slowly.
"No, Your Honor." "Did you inform him before making withdrawals?" "No, Your Honor." "Did you document any intention to repay these funds?" Silence. "Mr. Mercer, I asked you a question." "No," Dad finally said, his voice barely audible. "I didn't." The judge sat back. "So you withdrew over $200,000 from a trust designated for your son, without his knowledge or consent, and used it primarily for the benefit of your stepson. Is that accurate?" Dad's lawyer started to speak, but Dad waved him off.
"Yes."
"That's accurate." Mom sobbed loudly from the gallery. Dean put his head in his hands. The judge looked at the papers in front of her, then at me. "Mr. Calvin Mercer, what are you seeking as restitution?" I stood. Marcus had coached me on this. "Keep it simple. Keep it clear. I want the trust restored to its original value," I said. $240,000 plus interest. "And I want control of the account transferred entirely to me. Anything else?" I hesitated. Then, I wanted on record that what he did was wrong, that my mother's wishes mattered, that I mattered. The courtroom went quiet. The judge nodded slowly. "The court will take a brief recess to review the documentation. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Everyone stood as she left. I walked out into the hallway, breathing hard. Marcus followed. "You did good," he said. I nodded, but I couldn't speak, because across the hall, I could see my father through the courtroom window. He was crying, actually crying. And part of me, the part that still remembered being 8 years old and thinking he was a hero, wanted to go to him. But I didn't. Because heroes don't steal from their children. When we went back in, the judge had made her decision. "Mr. Richard Mercer, this court finds that you violated your fiduciary duty as trustee. You are hereby ordered to restore the trust fund to its original value of $240,000 plus accumulated interest within 90 days. Additionally, all control of the trust is transferred to Calvin Mercer, effective immediately. Dad stood there, silent. Furthermore, the judge continued, your assets will be reviewed to ensure compliance. Failure to meet this obligation will result in seizure of property and potential criminal charges for fraud. She looked at me. Mr. Mercer, I hope this brings you some measure of justice. Court dismissed. The gavel came down. And just like that, it was over. Winning didn't feel like I thought it would. I walked out of that courtroom with Marcus, with the judge's ruling in my favor, with justice served, and I felt empty.
Hollow.
Like I'd won the battle but lost something I couldn't name. Mom tried to stop me in the parking lot. Calvin, please. Can we just talk? I kept walking. He made a mistake, she called after me. People make mistakes. I turned around. For 5 years, Mom. He made that mistake for 5 years. Every single day, he could have told me. Every single day, he could have stopped.
He didn't.
He was trying to help Dean. He was stealing from me, I said. There's no other word for it. And you let him. Her face crumpled. I didn't know about the trust. Not at first. But you knew later. You knew, and you said nothing. She had no response to that. I got in my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing alone in the parking lot, and for a second I almost turned around. Almost. But I didn't. The next few weeks were a blur. The court order meant Dad had to liquidate assets to pay me back. The vacation house in Savannah went up for sale first. Then the boat he'd bought 2 summers ago. Then the timeshare in Florida. Dean's car got repossessed, the one bought with $50,000 of my dollars. I heard through mutual friends that he was furious, claiming I'd ruined his life over some old money. But it wasn't old money. It was my mother's love, crystallized into cash. It was her working double shifts and coming home exhausted. It was her thinking about my future while she was dying. And they treated it like monopoly money. Marcus called 6 weeks after the hearing. Your father's made the first payment. $50,000. It's in your account. I checked my phone. There it was.
Real.
Tangible.
Mine.
He's selling the main house too, Marcus continued. Should cover the rest of what he owes, plus interest. The main house. The one I grew up in. The one where Mom had told me they couldn't afford 2 tickets. I should have felt satisfaction. Vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Calvin? It was Dean. What do you want? I wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know about the trust. I didn't know where the money was coming from. I waited. My dad, Richard. He told me your family was well off. That helping me was no big deal. I believed him. I should have asked more questions. Yeah, I said. You should have. For what it's worth. I get why you're angry. If someone did that to me, I'd probably burn the whole thing down. I almost laughed. I'm not burning anything down, Dean. I'm just taking back what was mine. He was quiet for a moment. I'm moving to Arizona. Got a job offer out there. Figured it was time to start fresh. Good luck, I said. And I meant it. Dean wasn't the villain here. He was just the excuse Dad used to be one. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and stared at my bank account. The number kept growing as Dad sold off pieces of the life he'd built on my mother's sacrifice. But money's strange. It doesn't fix the years of feeling invisible. It doesn't erase the memory of standing at that window, watching them drive away. It doesn't make you feel like you belong again. I'd won. But what exactly had I won? A few days later, I was going through paperwork when I found something I'd missed before, a note my mother had written, tucked into the original trust documents. My dearest Calvin, it read. If you're reading this, I'm gone. But I want you to know that everything I did for you. This money is your freedom, your choices, your chance to build a life you love. Don't let anyone take that from you. You are stronger than you know, and braver than you believe. Make me proud, baby. But more importantly, make yourself happy. All my love, Mom. I read it 3 times. Then I knew what I had to do. The money wasn't just about revenge. It was about honoring her, about doing something that mattered. I called Marcus the next morning. I want to set up a scholarship fund for kids who've lost a parent but are still trying to build a future. Call it the Eliza Mercer Memorial Scholarship. He was quiet. Then, that's a good idea, Calvin. A really good idea. We set it up within a month. I put $50,000 into the fund, enough to help 5 students a year with college expenses. The local paper ran a story about it, a small piece on page 6. That's when Mom called. I saw the article, she said softly. What you did with the scholarship. That was beautiful.
I didn't know what to say.
Your mother would be so proud of you, Calvin. I know I haven't said that enough. I know I failed you. But I'm proud of you too. I felt my throat tighten. Thanks, Mom. Do you think maybe someday we could talk? Really talk? I thought about it. About forgiveness and family, and whether some things can be repaired. Maybe, I said. Someday. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. The house sold 3 months after the hearing. I drove past it one last time before the new owners moved in. The sold sign stood proud in the front yard, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of something else. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. Dad paid the full restitution amount the day escrow closed. $240,000 plus $23,000 in interest and penalties. My bank account had never looked like that before. Marcus called to congratulate me. You did it, Calvin. Full recovery. That's rare in cases like this. Thanks for everything, I said. So what now? What are you going to do with it? I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. The money was mine, really mine for the first time.
No one could take it.
No one could spend it on someone else's dreams while mine sat waiting. I'm going to live, I said simply. And I meant it. The first thing I did was quit my second job. I'd been working 60-hour weeks for years, trying to save, trying to prove I didn't need anyone's help. But I was exhausted, burned out, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix.
So I quit.
Kept my main job, but let go of the night shifts and weekend work. Suddenly I had time, real time, to think about what I actually wanted. The scholarship fund grew. I added more money, expanded it to help 10 students a year instead of 5. Applications came in from kids all over the state, kids who'd lost parents, kids who were working multiple jobs, kids who reminded me of myself. Reading their stories hurt in the best way. It reminded me why I'd fought so hard. Not for revenge. For recognition. For the chance to make something good from something broken. One girl wrote, "My mom died when I was 13. Everyone said I'd be okay, that I was strong. But nobody asked if I wanted to be strong. I just wanted help. Thank you for helping." I cried reading that. Because I understood exactly what she meant. Mom and I started talking again, carefully, slowly, like 2 people learning a new language. She never made excuses for Dad, which I appreciated. She just listened when I needed to talk, and gave me space when I didn't. "I should have protected you more," she said one day over coffee. I got so focused on keeping the peace that I forgot to fight for what was right. "I survived," I said. "You shouldn't have had to just survive," she replied. "You deserved better." It was the closest she'd come to a real apology. I accepted it. Dad and I didn't talk. He tried a few times, left voicemails, sent emails, but I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. Some betrayals are too deep to bridge. Dean sent me a postcard from Arizona. "Starting fresh out here. Got a good job, a small apartment, and I'm actually paying my own bills for once. Thanks for the wake-up call."
D.
I stuck it on my fridge. Not because I forgave him, but because it was proof that sometimes forcing someone to stand on their own is the kindest thing you can do. 6 months after the court case, I did something I'd been planning since that day in the attic. I booked a trip to Savannah. 1 ticket, 1 suitcase, 1 person who didn't need permission or company to make memories. I stayed in a small bed and breakfast near the beach, the kind of place my mother would have loved. Old wood floors, rocking chairs on the porch, homemade breakfast every morning. I spent the days walking the historic district, eating at restaurants I'd never heard of, sitting on the beach, watching the waves. I didn't take many pictures. Didn't post anything online. Just existed in the moment, present and whole. On my last evening there, I walked to the beach at sunset. The sky was orange and pink, the kind of beautiful that makes you believe in second chances. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last text Dad had sent weeks ago. "I'm sorry, son. I hope one day you can forgive me." I typed a reply. "I'm working on forgiving myself first. For staying silent so long. For thinking I didn't deserve better. Maybe after that, we'll see." I hit send. Then I turned off my phone and watched the sun disappear into the ocean. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after your own family broke you down, drop a comment. Share your story. Because healing isn't loud, it's quiet, personal, and it happens one choice at a time. I came back from Savannah different, not fixed. I don't think you ever fully fix that kind of hurt. But lighter. Like I'd set down something heavy I'd been carrying for years and finally realized I didn't have to pick it back up. Work felt different. Life felt different. I started saying no to things I didn't want to do, and yes to things I'd been too scared to try. I took a painting class, joined a hiking group, started therapy because pretending to be okay isn't the same as actually being okay. My therapist asked me once, "Do you think you'll ever fully forgive your father?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Does it matter?" "Only if holding on to it hurts you more than him." I thought about that a lot, because the truth was, Dad was already living with consequences. He'd lost his house, his savings, his relationship with his son. The court had given me justice. Holding on to anger now was just poisoning myself. So I worked on letting go. Not forgetting. I'd never forget, but releasing the grip it had on my chest. One afternoon, about 8 months after everything ended, I was at the grocery store when I saw him.
Dad.
He looked older, grayer, smaller somehow. He was alone, pushing a cart through the produce section, and he didn't see me. I could have walked away. Should've, maybe. But something made me approach. "Hey, Dad." He turned, and his whole face changed. Hope and fear mixed together. "Calvin."
Hi.
I didn't expect to see you."
Yeah.
I shifted my weight. This was harder than I thought it'd be. "How are you?" "Getting by. Living in an apartment now. Smaller. But it's okay." He paused. "How are you?" "Good. Really good, actually." He nodded, and I saw something in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or just sadness. "I saw the article about the scholarship. That was a good thing you did. Mom would have wanted it. She would have." His voice cracked slightly. "She'd be proud of you, Calvin. I know I don't have the right to say it, but I'm proud of you too." I wanted to be angry. Wanted to throw his words back in his face. But standing there, looking at this broken old man who used to be my hero, I just felt tired. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said quietly. "I don't know if I ever will be. But I don't hate you either. I'm just done carrying it around." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "That's fair. That's more than fair." We stood there for a moment, two people connected by blood and history and hurt. "Take care of yourself, Dad." "You too, son." I walked away. Didn't look back. And for the first time in my life, leaving him didn't hurt. 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. From Dean. Inside was a check for $5,000. "Calvin," the note read, "I know this doesn't fix anything. I know it's not nearly enough. But I've been saving since I started my new job, and I wanted to pay back at least some of what was spent on me. Not because I have to, because I want to. You deserved better than what you got from our family. I hope you're doing okay."
Dean.
I stared at that check for a long time. Then I deposited it and donated the full amount to the scholarship fund. The Eliza Mercer Memorial Scholarship kept growing. By the end of the year, we'd helped 15 students. Each one sent thank you notes, and I read every single one. One kid wrote, "I thought nobody cared if I made it or not. This showed me someone does. I won't waste it." That's when I knew. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about making sure my mother's sacrifice meant something. About turning pain into purpose. A year after the court case, I stood in my apartment, the nice one I'd moved into, the one with big windows and space to breathe, and realized something. I'd won. Not because I destroyed my father or gotten my money back. I'd won because I'd chosen myself. Because I'd stopped accepting scraps and demanded what I deserved. Because I'd learned that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And revenge doesn't have to scream. Sometimes it just settles the score quietly and walks away free. I opened my laptop and booked another trip. Ireland this time. Then Japan. Then wherever I wanted, because the money was mine and the life was mine, and the choices were finally, completely mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Dinner this weekend? My treat. I smiled and typed back. Sure. But I'm paying. Because I could afford it now. Not just financially, emotionally. I could afford to show up, to be present, to rebuild what could be rebuilt, and release what couldn't. That evening, I walked to the balcony and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Dad was living his smaller life. Dean was building his fresh start. Mom was learning to live with her regrets. And me? I was free. You said you couldn't afford 2 tickets, I whispered to the night sky. Turns out, you couldn't afford to lose me either. But I'd found myself anyway. And that was worth more than any amount of money could ever be. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we've got more stories about quiet justice, second chances, and finding your strength when life tries to break you. Drop a comment sharing your own story of standing up for yourself. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, that silence isn't weakness, that you deserve better, that justice doesn't always roar, share this video with them. Together, we're building a community of people who refuse to stay invisible. This is your reminder. Never mistake silence for weakness. Some people build their revenge in peace. And when it comes, it doesn't scream. It settles the score. Quietly.